Hi, everyone. My name is Jennifer Redford. I'm a youth services consultant at the Idaho Commission for Libraries. That means that my job is to support librarians all around the state and library staff as they do programming and provide services for families in their community. And for this project, I'm also specifically supporting library staff that work with teens and tweens.
Hi, I'm Maria Ricks. I work at the Meridian Library District in the Outreach Department as a Youth Services Librarian.
So this training is part of a larger project that was conceived because there's nationally been a need for improved training and professional development for library staff that serve teens. So YALSA, the Young Adult Library Services Association, and COSLA, the Chief Officers of State Libraries Association, got together to get a grant from the Institute for Museum Services and Library Sciences to train folks across the country to go back to their states and train library staff on teen services. So Maria and I are the trainers for Idaho, and we're tasked over the course of a couple of years with implementing these trainings that are being implemented all across the country. The training that we're doing today is called Ages and Stages, and it really covers some basics of child development for youth, really ages 8 to 18. So we're kind of getting into those older kids, tween crowds, because the developmental ages sort of smear into each other. So we're going to be talking about all of that today. So let's go ahead and get started with our presentation. Move that over there. Okay. So the ages and stages of youth development. Having a basic understanding of youth development is really crucial when you work with teens and tweens. You need to know where they're at in their developmental stages so that you can interact with them appropriately and have expectations of them that are also appropriate. So today we're going to summarize some key research in child development and focus on how to create programs and services that are appropriate for youth in your community. After this training, you should be able to understand the cultural concept of childhood in the United States, identify various stages and ages of child development, and you should be able to design developmentally appropriate activities and learning environments. So that's sort of what we're going to do over the next hour or so. Let's go ahead and get started.
So understanding ages and stages really helps us as we are developing our programs and our room, all the ways we interact with teens through all the years that they are growing up. So one of the things that really helps us to be able to do that is to be able to analyze what it was like and remember what it was like when we were those ages ourselves. Strolling through the years is a practice that you can do that helps ground you in your memories of what it was like when you were those ages. Now, sometimes this can bring up some bad memories. That's not our focus here. Our focus here is on remembering the feelings and emotions of that time, but in a way that you are in complete control as you are remembering what it was like to be those ages and seeing how that would affect the people that you work with that are those ages that come into your library. If you need to pause to be able to focus more on all these questions, go ahead. That's one of the great things about this recording. If you also want to close your eyes to be able to focus more on your answers to these questions as you try to delve back into what it was like when you were these ages, that would work as well. So remember when. Remember when you were in 6th grade. Think about how your 6th grade self would answer the following questions. How do you feel about school? How do you like your teacher? What is your favorite thing to do after school? Who are your friends? What do you do together? What do you think about your parents? What does your room look like? What are your dreams? What do you imagine for your future? Now, let's go a little bit up in age. Remember when you were in 8th grade? Think about how your 8th grade self would answer the following questions. How do you feel about school? How do you like your teacher? What is your favorite thing to do after school? Who are your friends? What do you do together? What do you think about your parents? What does your room look like? What are your dreams? What do you imagine for your future? All right, now we're going to go a couple more years up ahead. Remember when you were in 11th grade. Think about how your 11th grade self would answer the following questions. How do you feel about school? How do you like your teacher or teachers? What is your favorite thing to do after school? Who are your friends? What do you do together? What do you think about your parents? What does your room look like? Did you have a car? What are your dreams? What do you imagine for your future? Now is a great time to reflect on your strolling through the ages. Did anything interesting, funny, or different occur to you as you strolled through the years? How can this exercise help you in your work with teens?
So now that you hopefully remember what it was like to be at the various stages of being a teenager, we thought it was important that you understand some basic theories of child development. So we call this issues of debate because each of these theories is up for debate. There's different developmental, or each theory focuses on a different aspect of development and emphasizes different causal factors. So we're just going to go over these issues. We're not going to actually debate which one is better or more valid, mostly because it's important for you to have an understanding of both sides of these issues so that when you're interacting with teens, you kind of have that in the back of your mind when you're thinking about why they're acting the way they are. So the first one's kind of a big one, nature versus nurture. So to what extent do people act the way they do or behave the way they do because of their biology or DNA, or do environmental conditions play a factor, or is it an interaction between the two? For example, is a child aggressive because of a genetic trait passed along, or because he's around aggressive people at home? And that can really make you think about why kids are behaving the way they are in your library setting. Critical periods. So these theories revolve around critical periods in which a child must have developed certain experience or must have certain experiences in order to develop. For example, if a child does not hear spoken language before she is a toddler, will she ever be able to develop normal language skills? So are there critical periods of development? Similarly, stages of development. Is development a continuous, gradual process, or are there a series of discrete stages? So once you've hit these milestones, then you go up to the next set of milestones. And do these stages represent major and abrupt transformations? For example, can a child learn a skill like division or representational drawing before they've learned or entered a stage of development where they can think in symbols? Can a child learn these skills before they're actually ready? One final theory is an endpoint. Is there an endpoint to development that all humans are supposed to reach? And are all children supposed to be developing toward the same goals? If you've never really thought about these questions, these theories are good to review just to kind of give yourself a different way of thinking about the kids you work with. In most cases, there's no simple or definitive answer to the questions. Human development is complex, and new research is constantly emerging that helps us better understand how children and teenagers develop. But again, it's good to know sort of the basics of it as you're working with teens. So now that we know some basics, let's get into something a little bit more concrete. Maria?
The pre-tween years, 8 to 10 years old. It's such a fun stage, and we are going to go through some of the different aspects of their growth and development when they are in this stage. So some of those attitudes and behaviors are actually part of what they're supposed to be doing at this age. First, we'll focus on bodies, then minds, ears and mouth, hearts and souls, and tips for how we can work with our patrons that are these ages. So physical development. We're more coordinated than we used to be. Sports and other physical activities are helping us with that. So as the bodies begin to develop and grow, some of us, especially girls, are actually starting puberty already between the ages of 8 and 10. The physical differences between boys and girls are starting to become more pronounced, and they're starting to notice them more and more. So we're not sure if boys are outperforming girls in sports because of these physical differences that are already happening, or if it's because the way that we raise boys and girls in our society. But it is important to know that that's starting to happen already. We are becoming more aware of what others think of how we look, and we're becoming more self-conscious about how we're different. So when you have the 8 to 10-year-olds who are coming to you who are wondering about how this looks on them, or want to point out, did their hair look nice enough? When they're asking about the different parts of their physical appearance, this is a natural part of that stage. Our minds. We are able to hold more than one concept in our mind at once. We are able to understand how something works, but we need the concrete materials to help us understand. Thinking has become more flexible. There's more of a gray area. Things are less black and white. So you're able to have some more of those in-depth conversations that are a little bit harder, and they want to have those more to be able to prove that they are growing up. They like to have jobs. They like to have designated roles to demonstrate and practice what they are learning and able to do that they weren't able to do a couple years before. Alongside with their newly developed logical thinking, they have a lot of curiosity about how things work and how they work for you. Our ears and mouth, language development. So they're able to talk more about their future and much further past just one day in the future or next week. But what about next year? What about next month? What about next school year? Who will be their teacher? What will they be able to do? So they're also learning to speak in metaphors and symbolic language, which helps with greater reading comprehension. And they're trying out sarcasm, which is one of my particular favorites in this age group, because they see the inflection, they see how the joke works, but they don't always understand how it works, which makes it even more fun to watch as this part of their development happens. And our hearts and souls. So they're better able to express their feelings with words, but there are those times when they're so upset that they just need to be reminded that they can express their feelings with words and to be able to step back, and that is part of practicing to become an adult. Especially if you showcase that for them, that is a wonderful thing to do as they are in this developmental stage. So they're also beginning to get those close friendships that actually move beyond just this person played with me at recess. This person may be playing with me at recess every day this week or this month, or they may want to build this friendship outside of class, outside of church. They want to have these friendships deeper and more in their lives. They're also able to recognize other people's feelings and emotions a lot more. And so you can actually use that as you are teaching them about how their actions affect other people more at this age. They're beginning to notice their status at school and in the family. They are also beginning to develop a sense of achievement and self-confidence when they accomplish something. So when you give those opportunities to accomplish things, it helps their self-awareness and it helps them build confidence. Rules are not so rigid anymore. They understand this and they are going to push to see how far these rules actually go and how flexible these rules are for them now. So some tips for working with 8 to 10-year-olds. Help them find things they are good at and give them plenty of opportunities to be successful and take pride in their accomplishments. And this can be a variety of things for them to learn and develop with. Provide lots of activities that give them opportunities to show off some of those new fine motor skills. Give them chances to ask questions and be involved in making the rules for themselves so they understand why the rules even exist in the first place. And then something that's the most important really, teach by example. Remember, these 8 to 10-year-olds are watching you and they're listening to you and they are understanding how the world works as they do that through you. So what types of programs and services can you offer in your library for the youth in this age group?
All right, so now let's move to 11 to 13-year-olds. It's just a couple of years different from 8 to 10-year-olds, but you'll see that the developmental processes are really different for this age group. And that's why it's important to understand sort of the age of the youth that you're interacting with so that you can interact with them in developmentally appropriate ways. So our bodies. So 11 to 13-year-olds are approaching adulthoods and their bodies continue to change. And there's a wide variation. Some have achieved growth spurts and some of them have not hit those growth spurts. There's a lot of rapid changes due to puberty. And that can really take a physical toll on their bodies and their attention spans and their energy levels. Sometimes kids might appear more mature than they are, so it's really good to sort of understand that you might be looking at someone who looks one age but is developmentally this 11 to 13-year-old age. So it's very important that you sort of key in on that, the age of the kids you're working with, so that you don't have unrealistic expectations. So our minds, our cognitive development, our thinking is becoming more complex, and we realize things don't have single, simple answers. They can think abstractly without needing concrete examples or demonstrations. So if you're doing a program where you're trying to teach a concept, for younger kids, those 8 to 10-year-olds, you might need some like super concrete examples, but for these older kids, you can leave the questions a little bit more open-ended. So we're becoming more interested in the adult world, including politics, social and environmental issues. There's a sense of fairness and justice that is often quite strong, and I think you'll often hear from kids this age that that wasn't fair the way you treated my friend, it didn't treat me the same way. Does that ring a bell to anybody? So there's an ability to plan ahead, but still unable to really think long term. So they can plan ahead in terms of, I'm going to need to do X, Y, Z after school, but they may not realize that their actions have consequences. So if they're misbehaving in your library for whatever reason, they may not realize that the consequence of that may not have an impact on them the way you think it might. And they may challenge rules or manipulate adults, but they still need firm limits. That's important to recognize. Our ears and mouths. So again, 11 to 13-year-olds. Their vocabulary and language skills are expanding. They enjoy discussing and debating, especially issues of fairness and justice. And they're beginning to realize that sometimes the way they speak at home or with their friends is not necessarily appropriate in every setting, maybe not appropriate in a library setting. And our hearts and souls. So friendships are very important to kids in this age group. They've begun to develop a few really lasting and close friendships. But then you'll also see conflicts with friends and power struggles within groups. And those can be magnified for kids of this age group. Privacy with friends is important. And I think if you've seen kids in your library, they will probably try to find a private corner to charge their devices, but also be able to chat without everybody else hearing what they're talking about. There's an interest in the opposite sex and curiosity about sex and sexuality. They don't want to be associated with things they consider for younger kids, but they probably still enjoy playing with kid things. They want opportunities to contribute. And again, because of the rapid changes due to puberty, there's varying energy levels and physical changes that they're going through. So when you're working with kids in this age group, 11 to 13, provide them opportunities to discuss issues that are important to them and express their opinions. Give them space and respect their privacy while still letting them know that if you are available to them. Don't single them out in front of their peers for praise or criticism. So oftentimes in the heat of an exchange with young people, it might be the easy thing to do to chastise or scold the whole group, but taking each kid aside one by one, or just the instigators aside one by one, might have more of an impact for you. And provide opportunities for kids of this age to participate in community service, to work in groups, and to make things creatively. So when you're thinking about the programs you offer for 11 to 13-year-olds, maybe focus on those aspects. So how does your library serve this age group? What programs would work best for kids ages 11 to 13?
And then 14 to 18-year-olds, the teens. So this is a great group that has a lot going on. There are a lot of differences between 14-year-olds and 18-year-olds, but we're going to group them together because everyone is traveling these differences at different rates and at different times. And so some might be developed more in one area, but not developed as much in another area. And so we'll just cover the entire group together. So first, our bodies, physical development and abilities. Most have overcome the awkwardness of puberty and are approaching physical maturity. Some are still experiencing growth spurts, especially guys, and they're dealing with the voices deepening, which, I mean, when you've communicated with a teen and their voices are still deepening, there's definitely this lag time where they need to concentrate and then they speak because they don't want their voice to break. So that might be some of the pauses as you're waiting when you're talking to them. So acne, weight, exercise, and other physical changes make us self-conscious. We're concerned about body image and swayed by the images we see in advertising and media, and are worried about, do we fit society's standards of beauty? So with cognitive development, they are capable of abstract thought and solving complex problems, and they want to have learning that is meaningful, complex, and challenging. So when you're doing programs in the library, something that they actually have to work towards, maybe not every single day, but multiple times, something that they will actually want to solve and work through. So they're really thinking about the meaning of life, especially as they're approaching into adulthood. What does life mean for them in particular, as well as their age group? They enjoy philosophical discussions and developing their own philosophy. and they want you to take it seriously. Setting and attaining goals is very important to them, and they have a lot of goals that are happening at this stage in their life. They're better able to plan for their future and can imagine what consequences different choices will give them. They're starting to think about their goals and ambitions and what life will be like after high school and into college or after college. They're very curious, and this might be the time period where they experiment with drugs, alcohol, tobacco, and other risky behaviors. So their ears and mouth. Language development, they really want to discuss and debate. And with their ability to understand more complex ideas, they are even more excited about this and about people who take them seriously when they want to talk to you about these issues. They are realizing that the ways they speak at home and with friends, it's not always appropriate. Yeah, it's the same as with the 11 to 13-year-olds. This is still developing. And you in the library have a huge part in helping them figure out what is appropriate and what isn't. They also want to become experts in their chosen forms of self-expression in music, poetry, drama, visual arts, and creative writing, and will love to talk to you about it and show off what they can do without being singled out. So with their social and emotional development, they're learning more about themselves and figuring out how they fit in their town, in their community, in this country, in the world. They want to find out the answer to who am I? And it's a very important question for them that they may change throughout the years between 14 and 18. They might experiment with different answers to the question of who am I? Their friends are incredibly important to them, and social networks are just getting bigger and growing as they make friends outside of their usual circles. They also care about the well-being of others and they want people to know that they are unique. They care about being part of a group, but at the same time want you to recognize that they are an individual. They are gaining independence and further distancing themselves from their parents and other major adults in their lives. They're developing self-confidence and they want to receive respect for what they know and what they can accomplish. They want to take on more adult leadership roles and start practicing with that. And they want to demonstrate for you their knowledge and their skills. So they have a lot of tips for working with 14 to 18-year-olds. So they want opportunities to demonstrate independence and skills. They want to be involved in planning and learning experiences, and they want to have more adult responsibilities. They want to be pushed to stretch and think about providing. They want us to help them with figuring out real life problems because they know that those are around the corner and they're kind of scared of them, but kind of excited about them at the same time. They want opportunities to positively contribute to their communities and to be able to point out that they did something that helped others. They want to have us hold them to high standards and hold them accountable for their successes, both their positive success and when it doesn't work out. They want to be challenged and about thinking about their identity, their values and beliefs. They want to be encouraged to learn and about self-discovery, self-understanding, and how to get along with others. They want help to plan for their futures, and they want guidance without people telling them exactly what to do. So exposure to different career options, exposure to different ideas of how they could live as an adult. So what kind of options do they have? Is college the only answer? What opportunities are available for them, and what kind of money would they make in those different job opportunities? They don't want comments criticizing their appearance. They want to have opportunities to examine media messages and to really know what is normal and what is being falsified to make them want to buy a product. Also, they want answers to questions about sex, relationships, and health. And they don't want someone just to say they're too young for that, or they're too young to understand, because for them, this is important and they want to know about it now. Does your library support youth in this age group? How do your services and programs differ for this group than for younger and older people that come to your library?
All right, so now let's do a little bit of action planning. So when you think about your programs and services, how will knowing about child development impact how you interact with teens at your library and the type of access that they have? So think about this week. What can you change this week in your library to serve teens better, now knowing what you do about their development? What can you do this month? What programs and services can you offer this month that are developmentally appropriate for teens in your library? And really think about the teens that are coming in or the teens you want to target and what ages they are. What programs and services can you offer this month for that age group that meets their developmental needs? And then this year, what's your strategy for continuing to offer programs and services for teens? What strategy do you have to meet their developmental needs and provide access to programs and services that work for them? So that's the ages and stages of teen development, tween and teen development, sort of in a nutshell. Obviously, there is a lot to learn and people have, devoted years of study to this. There's a lot of research out there that you can track down to help you understand more if you want to have an in-depth understanding of developmental stages. But hopefully at the end of this, you have enough to really start thinking about your programs critically and your services critically and intentionally craft them in a way that is appropriate for teens in your library. I'd also maybe challenge you to look at the policies for your library. Do they make sense for the teens that are coming in um, based on those developmental ages and stages?
And understanding these developmental ages and stages helps us to understand why the teens are behaving the way they are in our library. And when you understand how that works, how their brain is functioning, and what is going on inside their minds and bodies, it helps us to be able to work with them in a better way and to be able to treat them more as they need to be treated in, and that makes it better for them in our libraries, and it makes it a much more enjoyable experience when we work with them.
Mm-hmm. Just like you wouldn't ask a crying baby to please be quiet because developmentally that baby is crying and that's just the stage they're at. They don't have, they literally don't have the ability to stop crying or they don't understand why you're asking them to stop crying. Same thing goes for teens, but just on different levels. So they have different developmental needs, and your expectations should align with where they're at developmentally, because literally they can't understand your sarcasm sometimes. They can't read the emotions on your face. Um, I recommend, if you want to know a little bit more about uh, working with teens, that you check out an online class called A Teen Walks into the Library. It was created by the Colorado State Library, and it's a fantastic overview of some concrete things you can do when a teen walks into your library and how to interact with them in developmentally appropriate ways. But hopefully by now you have enough to move forward with and you feel supported in terms of providing services and access for teens in your community.
These are an important part of our community, these teens. And honestly, the library is a great opportunity for them to meet together and to socialize and to practice these skills and their development outside of a school and home setting.
All right, well, thank you for joining us. On behalf of Maria and myself, we hope you got something out of this presentation. And if you need to contact us, I assume that the conference platform will have our email somewhere. So take care, everybody. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us today.